Welcome back into JumpStart Sports. Another day, another episode. Jason Cobb, thank you for joining me once again. How are we doing, buddy?
We are doing fantastic, and down here in Fort Lauderdale, in my
New location, I see.
a new
Are those new
location indeed.
are those new spectacles as well?
Yes, and just
You
for
remind
everyone,
you remind me of a young Professor Jacques Clouseau.
And I intend to show the world exactly who I am and what I can do.
The
Well-
Pink Panther.
well, we're very excited to make this episode. We're going to be covering a lot of stuff. Let's get right into it with something that we knew was going to happen. It's kind of been a watch for I feel like the past week or so, maybe even week and a half, was Steph Curry breaking the all-time record in three-pointers made.
Wiggins again. Here's Curry for the record. It's good! There it is! Stephen Curry, the all-time three-point king in the NBA.
I mean, of course it happened against my Knicks, but
It
I
had
mean,
to. It had to.
had
I'm glad it wasn't against my Sixers. That's for
yeah,
sure.
no. Well, you see Joel Embiid came up to him and said, "Not on my court."
Yeah, he said at the
Knicks
end,
were like-
the end of the game, him and Thibault got interviewed, and I can never really
Okay.
understand what that man's saying, but from what I could get out of it, he was just saying, "Not on our court. We're not going to let that happen."
The Knicks, however, it would have been the easiest bet of all time. It was minus 110 that it would have happened in the first quarter. I could have predicted that coming from a mile away. For me, it kind of comes full circle after the 54-point game when he was having his breakout season in 2012-2013 against the Knicks, where he just lit them up. But I mean, what a storied career. I mean, crazy, but what do you make of it?
It's just awesome being able to watch history. Steph really did change the game of basketball when you think about it. So many people talk about it, how Reggie Miller's talking about it on the broadcast last night that he was doing, how when he played, it was just such an inside man's game. And now because of Steph, everyone wants to go out there, and especially, for basketball players like us who can't dunk a basketball, and
Yet.
we don't really have much of a big man's game.
Mhm.
The closest thing to a dunk for us, I feel like, is knocking down a long 3-pointer. There's just a great feeling to it, and Steph has just taught so many kids who are growing up loving the game of basketball. Shooting the 3-pointer from long distance is just not the easiest thing to do. It's not always the best play, but it's just kind of the way of basketball right now. And Steph's really redefined the game of basketball with his shooting, and
Absolutely.
it's only fitting that he already, I believe, solidified himself as the greatest 3-point shooter of all time. But passing Ray Allen last night, I believe it was, now he's at 2,977 threes, the most 3-pointers made in NBA history. It just solidifies it even more and just adds to the accolades that he has. 3-time NBA champion, Finals MVP, 2-time MVP of the league, 7-time NBA All-Star. I believe this will be his 8th one this year. I don't really know what else he needs to do to prove himself, Jay, but
Yeah, and he's an MVP candidate, probably a front runner. I mean, you have to say front runner. We've talked about it before. He's incredible. He's the best shooter ever. And he even said on his Instagram he was waiting until that he actually passed Ray Allen at 2009-73 that Ray Allen was at. So he was waiting until he passed him to say he's finally the best shooter of all time. But I mean, man, Dell must be feeling great. And for those of you guys who don't know who that is, it's the Curry's father is Del Curry. He played for probably around 10 years as well. Was a great shooter. But I mean, to have raised two of the best shooters in the league, and Steph Curry being the best shooter probably ever, I mean, it's an amazing accomplishment. He's really a fantastic player.
Stephen A. Smith brought up an interesting point. I believe it was him about putting him into the GOAT conversation with LeBron and MJ. And at first I kind of shook my head because I was like, you can't compare anybody to MJ and LeBron. But when you look at what he's accomplished, maybe he has a point. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I feel like, we talked about it a little bit on last week's episode with Allen Iverson's top 5. And I feel like you have to put him in the conversation now. As weird as it is, like we talked about, and you just mentioned, like he transformed the game completely. Like 3-pointers are a focal point of offenses. 3-pointers being defended is a focal point of defenses, and it ultimately, similar to how like the run game sets up a play action for football, the 3-pointer sets up the rest of the offensive game plan as well. Because once you have that, you can really solidify an inside game. But if you only have an inside game, similar to if you remember years ago with the Charlotte Bobcats, so obviously years ago with Al Jefferson, who is one of like the most talented big men.
Al.
He was Big Al, and he was incredibly talented. He had amazing footwork, but the game just changed so much. So people like that, like Jahlil Okafor when he came out of Duke, same kind of thing. Sixers hopeful, right?
Yeah, what a bum.
Yeah. Well, look, like it's just he couldn't adapt to the game. So it's just a completely different way it's played, and that was all really attributed to Steph Curry and his prowess on the court.
And I think you could describe, some of the top players in the NBA in different ways. For example, if you were to say who's the greatest scorer of all time, you'd probably say MJ. But if you were to say who's the most dominant player of all time, you could argue LeBron. But then when you think of easily, no doubt, there's no arguing this, who's the greatest shooter of all time, first name that's going to come to mind is Steph Curry.
Absolutely.
No doubt. And then you obviously have to throw Kobe in there. He's in the argument. But, congratulations to him. He didn't really need to do what he did last night to prove himself, but he did. Now it's just kind of a question of, I guess the next person who could potentially pass him would be James Harden. He's fourth on the list, but he's so far back right now, I think. And, Steph's just going to keep running away with that.
Yeah.
Do you think, probably won't be in our lifetime, but do you think there will ever be somebody who will catch as him?
That's a tough question. I feel like they probably, when Ray Allen set the record, said no one will ever beat this. So probably sometime. I don't know if it'll be in our lifetime. Steph Curry's just what an incredible shooter. He makes this look so effortlessly. And honestly, like it like normalized the way that people shoot. Like we shot when we used to leave our Muhlenberg College dining hall, we would grab a couple oranges and we'd toss them into the trash cans that were like pretty far away, and we yelled Curry. We'd miss, except for that one.
I was the only one. I was the only one who made that.
Yeah, you're the only one who hit it on that random time. One out of like, we did it every single day.
A lot of wasted oranges.
Yeah, a lot of wasted oranges. But anyway, I mean, besides from the fact that we're wasteful, we still yelled Curry every time. Like it just kind of became that normal thing, or like paper into like the trash, like or whatever.
Yeah,
so
Curry really redefined the game of basketball, and who knows if anyone will ever pass him. We could, you and I could flash forward. We'd be 100 years old in our basements eating our cream of wheat.
That's right.
We'll say back when I was a boy, Steph Curry set the record, and who knows, 80 years from now, somebody else might be able to do it. But
like my son,
like your son, maybe we'll see. Don't know if it'll be in our lifetime, but
no,
so congratulations to Steph again for doing that. But other big news in the NBA hasn't really been talked about, I feel like, that much, but just kind of looking at Zion Williamson's situation.
Yep.
He hasn't played a game this year. It was just announced that he, suffered a setback with his right foot injury. What do you make of all this? Do you think it's a Greg Oden type situation?
Oh, that's a really good comparison.
Or do you think he just needs to take this year off, rest, get back to 100%, perhaps lose a couple LBs, and then try to get back to work?
Yeah. God, it's tough. Oden really is a fantastic comparison. It's different. You're welcome. It's different because Zion Williamson's playing weight was 280, 285 which we all thought would be way too heavy. Analysts thought it would be too heavy, and then he proved everyone wrong, and he was incredible when he finally got back on the court his rookie year. So it's just tough to imagine that he's 330 rumored to be right now, and he looks it. So he looks it. That's the issue. And ever since he was with the Pelicans, I mean, they're a very, very dysfunctional organization, always have been. But ever since he's been with them, I feel like there's kind of this cloud over them. I mean, his family has made comments about how they don't want him there. And it just has always felt a little weird. Like now he has another setback. He'll probably be out maybe the rest of the year. And then, he has 2 more years left on the contract, and then he could go anywhere. And my question is, like, does the weight come down when it's convenient? Is the weight, kind of a nod to like, hey, I don't care about this organization. I'm not going to work very hard for it. Could this inspire trade talks? Like, maybe, right? I mean, what do you think?
The weight's an interesting thing because obviously suffering that setback, he's probably not able to do a whole lot on that foot, but you can still stay in shape. You can still, put the work in. That doesn't have to do with putting pressure on your foot.
Right.
Get shots up. I know his jump shot's been something he's wanted to work on improving over the years. He was, dominant at Duke. And even when he did play for the Pelicans so far, like when they had, Brandon Ingram, JJ Redick, they weren't bad. They were, not an easy team to beat, but the weight's an interesting thing now, especially the first thing I think of is the Mountain Dew commercial he has.
Levine feeling it out a bit from downtown, Rick. Hey, Zach, your mom called. You're not invited to Thanksgiving.
What's this dude talking about?
Now, here's Williamson. That sure won't help your 2K rating, Zion.
Bruh. All right, do break.
No wonder he's not losing any weight. His fat ass is sitting on the couch just drinking Mountain Dew, playing video games. And
yep.
Obviously it's just a commercial, but I think that's obviously something he has control of fixing.
Yeah. It kind of, sorry to interrupt you. It kind of makes you think of like the Gordon Hayward, right? After his horrific injury that he sustained when it was that opening day game against the Cavaliers when he was a Celtic. And he was shooting. I just remember seeing all these videos. Like he was shooting from his like wheelchair. Like all he wanted to do is keep putting up shots. And to Zion's credit, maybe he's still putting up shots. Like we don't know. We don't see behind the curtains, but the weight is showing. So
I've heard a lot of talk too about, and I could really see this happening. About him. Obviously, you would love this coming to the Knicks, playing reconnecting with RJ. That could be pretty cool. I don't really know where else I could see him playing, but I definitely think the way things have been going and the comments his family has made, his days, he could possibly have played his last game with the Pelicans.
It's definitely possible. He on the Knicks, I feel like would be a good addition. If Julius Randle isn't there, I feel like it's kind of convoluted at the power forward position with him and Obi Toppin right now. But yeah, anyway, like in theory, I think you're right. I think he'll go. They definitely have to probably entertain talks now. It's different.
I think that's another team with the way they're going. They're going to have to start looking at a rebuilding process, which is interesting because you would think they're already starting to try to rebuild with Brandon Ingram and Zion. But come the end of the season, I wouldn't be surprised if Zion gets traded. Brandon Ingram wants to go somewhere else where he can compete because he's really turned things around since his days on the Lakers. So that's just, the Pelicans are just another team in the NBA that we've discussed before looking to rebuild. As of recently, look at the Indiana Pacers. They came out and said that they want Sabonis. They're looking to trade Sabonis, Karis LeVert, Miles Turner for the right price. So TJ McConnell's hurt now. Not that he's their, star point guard, but they're looking to rebuild as well. The Pacers were a team I wanted the Sixers to try to talk with in terms of, getting Sabonis, Karis LeVert for Simmons and other things. I thought that'd be pretty cool. That's probably not going to happen. But what do you make of the Pacers and their situation right now? Because even though they, came out and said they're not tanking, but they're looking to rebuild, and they're obviously probably not a playoff team this year, they're still a scrappy team. They're still a good team with their players.
Yeah. Even when they played the Knicks, I think, first of all, they have a lot of talent. So it's interesting that they're very willing to go right into the rebuild because obviously some of the players don't love their the way they're being utilized, such as Miles Turner, who after the Knicks got absolutely creamed by them, he came out and was like, I'm just like a glorified role player and I want more. So it's interesting. He really is a very talented player who's just dealt with injuries his whole career. Out of Texas, he's a blocking machine. I think he averages like 2.6 for his career, which is insane. And he shoots the three. He shoots like 35% from three, which is good enough. And he can really knock it down, stretch the floor. He's a modern day stretch five, which I think is really important. As we talked about with what Steph Curry's done, now even centers are shooting. And it's tough looking from like a Knicks fan, watching Nerlens Noel, Mitchell Robinson, those two, even Taj Gibson, who's their third center, like to some extent, watching like rim protectors who are just rim protectors and rim runners, which for those of you who don't know what that means, it's like people like Mitchell Robinson, Nerlens Noel, Clint Capella types are very like good for their systems and they're good defensive players, but all they're really good at is dunking, shooting from inside the paint from like 2 to 3 feet, and that's it. And being able to anchor the defense. What a lot of them have problems with is defending on the perimeter, and the other thing that they have problems with is obviously the shooting. Mitchell Robinson is a huge example of this. Like, he's a garbage shooter, even though he always says, let me shoot more threes every year, and we're like, please don't. So watching someone like that, and then watching someone like Miles Turner, who, if he is in the right position, I feel like can really thrive. And I really like Sabonis too.
Yeah, I would say even Sabonis, he's an all-star. And can you imagine if he went to like a team that needed another big, like a third guy, like if he went to the Warriors or if he went to the Heat or something, because Bam's down right now. Like, he's a good player, and he's all, whenever I've watched him against the Sixers, he's always given us trouble. So he's got a lot of talent. I'm sure any team would be lucky to have him.
Do you have any landing spots for Karis LeVert? Because we kind of talked about Domantas Sabonis, Miles Turner. I know the Knicks are looking into him. Who knows what will happen? But any ideas for Karis LeVert?
Yeah, I mean, Karis LeVert, another playmaker. He suffered that ACL injury, but he's really bounced back from that. But it's really just a team that's looking for a scorer, someone who. A team that needs a scorer. I'm thinking Sixers for everything. So like the Sixers could really use him because they need another scorer. So he could fit in well with us. Probably not going to happen because the Sixers would ask for the rest of their team as well. And in negotiation,
someone else's team.
Yeah, for Ben Simmons. So just, he could really fit in with so many teams that could use just another scorer. And I'm sure he'd be happy to go anywhere where he could win. Like, I don't think of the Wizards as being, a playoff team, but if he went there, he could help improve them.
He reminds me of like a Chris Middleton light. That's kind of what he reminds me of. Someone
2.0,
like a very good 3-and-D player who can light it up when needed. So that could be. Sorry, what were you saying?
I'm sure like teams like the Knicks would love to have him. Just a team that is in need for another scorer. And he is like a sleeper. You don't think of him as being like a 20-point guy a game, but
he's capable of it.
He's capable of it. He's very athletic. Has a lot of skill. He's proven himself. So we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen. But another big story just going across the NBA and going across every major sport is COVID. And as it applies to the NBA, I can't help but think of, was it 2 years ago when we're in the bubble and how we're just like, I think of like the dome from the Simpsons movie, how we're just like trapped in this bubble. No fans are allowed. COVID, it was a peak COVID. Everything's taken over. Last year, things were better. And now here we are. I felt like this was the first like season of normalcy in a way. And back to square one, it feels like. It just like doesn't seem like anything's getting better. People are getting the booster shot, which obviously helps, but it's still shown that even if you have all 3 vaccines, you can still get COVID. I believe it's 97% of players in the NBA are fully vaccinated, which is, pretty good. We're not quite there yet, but despite that, it's just still showing that players all over the NBA and coaches are still getting COVID. You look at, and this is an interesting thing to bring up because the Bulls are the team as of recently that's been focused on with COVID because they've had so many players in COVID protocols. And when you get COVID, you're out for at least 10 days and you have to, make sure you're fully healthy so you don't expose the virus to anybody else. But the Bulls just didn't have enough players for their Tuesday and Thursday games against the Pistons and Raptors. They got fully postponed, which is interesting because I think of the Sixers and COVID really hit us hard. Embiid was out for more than 2 weeks. He said he felt like he was going to die. That's how badly it affected him. And then he comes out and says, like, why weren't our games postponed? Like, I think the Bulls might have had more players potentially. I'd have to look into that, but it's just interesting because we obviously would have liked to have those games be postponed, but instead we had to play through them. We, took a couple L's because of that. It's hard to, win games when you're not at full strength, but COVID is, I call it like the second defender out there that everyone's trying to avoid right now.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's really affecting, it's affecting the world, obviously. Obviously, I think that's part of it is with all the different variants that are coming out. It's so hard to be preventative against all of them. And unfortunately, the vaccines, you could still get it. It's still, and there's no reason to get put into politics or anything, but we just hope that everyone is healthy. But it's important to bring up because, like you said, like it's postponing games. It's causing problems for the NBA. It's causing problems for other sports leagues as well. I know the NBA has had a lot of problems with, like you said, the Bulls. The NFL has had problems as well. They had to put, I think, a record high. It was like 37 just yesterday, December 14th. So it's really interesting, and it's affecting teams. You can't help but think like this kind of reminds you of when, last year, it felt like every other week that someone was getting put on the COVID-19 list or getting, or out sick. It's unfortunate, but needs to be talked about. It happens. Like Harden, Aldridge, Bruce Brown on the Nets, they all had COVID. It's obviously kind of tearing through the world, especially the sports world. Is just more prominent just because, everyone loves sports and talks about sports and idolizes these players who now are getting sick. It's unfortunate, but it's the world we're living in.
Yeah, and you bring up the Nets because that's another team right now that's being affected by COVID. They had a game last night that I thought was going to get postponed as well, which the Raptors would not have been happy about, but they ended up playing through it. I thought it would be a close game. The Nets held on to win 131, 129 in overtime. Durant had a triple-double with 34, 13, and 11. But when I look at their team right now, like it seemed like they were like so desperate just to get a team out there. They played with 8 players. That's 3 subs. So Durant had to play. I'm pretty sure he played the entire game. I don't know if he sat once. But they had 3 subs, which is like unheard of. And look at their starting lineup right now. It was Durant, Blake Griffin, Patty Mills, who had a great game, Nicholas Claxton, and then the next 4 guys I've never even heard of: David Duke, Kessler Edwards, Cameron Thomas, Day'Ron Sharp.
Well, Cameron Thomas is their rookie.
I feel like they just picked these guys up off the street, but I've never heard of them.
Cam Thomas is their rookie, but everyone else I don't know if.
So it just goes to show like how much of an impact COVID can have, just in one day, how it can like your team can go from that to this. I doubt this will happen, but do you think it's possible come playoff time, if things stayed this bad, that they would reconsider going back to a bubble type situation?
I don't think they'd go back to a bubble. I don't
Based
know.
off of based off of money, I would say no, but
Yeah.
it's also it's also safety to fans as well. Like every Sixers game I've gone to, they say you have to wear a mask unless you're eating or drinking, and everyone wears the mask beard, or they just don't have it on at all. So maybe
Yep.
they just try to do a better job of like being stricter with that. But
Yeah, I
I don't
mean,
know.
it's interesting because I went to a couple Yankees games um, this past summer. While I was there, they were very strict about, someone was coming around and making sure your mask was over your nose, which is, it's great. It's outside, so we were like, whatever, but obviously we abided by whatever the rules were. It's going to be interesting to see because then I also similarly dealt with something like that when I went to a Knicks game, and they didn't really care once you're in there because you have to show your vaccination cards and whatever. But like people
Right.
are faking them. Antonio Brown did a great job doing that, huh?
Exhibit A.
Exhibit A. And look, people fake them, and it's how it goes, unfortunately. People just want their rights and whatever. But it'll be interesting. I don't think they'll bubble, but I could definitely see it hitting really hard because we're in the middle of winter now, right? And although it doesn't feel like it here in Fort Lauderdale, in New Jersey, New York, Northeast states, Midwest, it's friggin' cold, and the virus is not. It's not taking a break. It's there. It's really prevalent, and it's gonna only get worse for now, while it's cold and whatever. And I could definitely see more games getting postponed and pushed. They're gonna have to. And we could even use this maybe as a transitional period to some NFL topics as well. But COVID in the NFL, I mean, the Rams shut down their work and sent everyone home. You have the Browns putting 14 on the COVID list yesterday.
OBJ, Jarvis Landry, Austin Hooper, like they might not even have much of an offense this week against the Raiders, which at first was going to be an easy win for them, I would say. And now it's like the Raiders could probably beat them if they don't even have like their main guys out there.
Yeah, rolling out Case Keenum, I feel like is not the way that they're gonna win. I could be wrong, absolutely, but it'll be really interesting to see. But I don't even think reports are that they're not gonna even postpone that. So we'll have to see, and obviously we'll keep you guys updated via our Instagram if you haven't already. Follow us. We're JumpStart Sports Podcast on Instagram. Shameless plug, but look, it's tough. It's really tough, and COVID's hitting hard. And obviously, all those who are affected, we, wish you and your families the best. Unfortunately, we can't talk about it forever because we are here to talk about more sports. And in more depressing news, Demaryius Thomas passed away, 33 years of age, Broncos legend, number 88. How are you feeling about it? Do you have anything you want to say in regard to Demaryius Thomas and the impact while you were watching him? The floor is yours, my man.
Yeah, it's tough whenever you lose someone, and it's even it's especially tough when it's unexpected. He had seizure complications. Not sure the entire story behind it, but he's 33. He's 33 years old. It's such a young age, and you can't prepare for things like this to happen. It's one of the fortunate realities of life. It just kind of when something unexpected happens, you have to do everything you can just to surround yourself with people you love, and the Broncos organization surround themselves with their teammates. I saw before the game, Peyton Manning, you think of him, and Demaryius Thomas was such a big asset to that team, to the fantasy football world. Him and Peyton in Denver when they had Eric Decker, that Super Bowl team, they were unstoppable. And Demaryius Thomas was so good. I think about, the main play everyone thinks about is that overtime win, that pass from Tim Tebow. everyone thought Tim Tebow was gonna kind of take off, and he plummeted. But
Yeah.
that was just such a historic play in Denver Broncos history. But it's tough. It's sad when you lose someone. Gone way too soon. My thoughts and prayers obviously go out to him and his family. And I think of just like when you lose someone, it's not just about being sad about that they're not there anymore, but it's about being uplifting and staying positive and doing everything you can to remember that person and keep their memory alive. And I think the Broncos did a really nice job of that. It's very timely that they had a home game. Even more timely that they played the Detroit Lions, because you knew that they were going to beat them. So you wanted them to win for DT, and they did just that. They won 38-10, I believe. And then just like watching the game, it's not about like, for me, because I'm obviously not a Broncos fan, but it wasn't about watching it be like, oh, like I want to see who plays well fantasy wise, or I want to see the Broncos get a win. I watched that game to see like how players were going to step up and how they can honor DT. And sure enough, they did. They put his number 88 on the field. When one of the Broncos players got an interception, Justin Simmons, he went right to and put the ball on him, saying like, that's for you. Whether they knew each other or not, it's just like a very special moment. I'm blanking on who it is. I'd have to look it up, but I think of this often when situations like this happen with Chad Ochocinco when he played for the Bengals. There was I believe a wide receiver on the Bengals who passed away. I'm blanking on his name, but in that game, Chad Johnson scored a touchdown, and then he like went right to like a spot to honor him and started crying, and it's just like it's a very emotional time. Yeah, and this is something that's going to be hard to move through. You just have to take it one day at a time, and like I said, you do everything to keep his memory alive.
Yeah, and like we talked about last week a little bit, the Lions are a very classy organization. I don't know if you saw this, but the first play of the game when the Broncos got the ball, they didn't even call play. They just let the clock run out, and it was just like a tribute moment. It's really cool. It was just like, another way to just, like you said, like something that's really important when people pass away. I strongly believe this is not, obviously you have to mourn and remember, but it's more of a celebration of their lives. I feel that way. And Demaryius Thomas is one of the best receivers to ever do it. I saw multiple articles and things on Twitter of people saying his smile would just light up the room, and he just filled the room with like love and joy. Tell the people that you love them. Life is fleeting. You never know what day will be the last. And I know it's a little depressing to talk about this now, but it's important. And anything can happen. For this, it was supposedly a seizure and then complications from a car accident in 2019, right? It happens. It's horrible. Obviously, I second that my thoughts and prayers go out to his family and all those affected by it. But tell someone you love them. It's really important.
It's a good way to put it, Jay. Yeah, hug the ones close to you extra tight today, because you never know when tragedy can strike. Mm-hmm. We do have to move forward, but we always, will remember him and keep his memory alive. But that's where we are right now, and just kind of looking a little bit back to the other games that happened this week. We started off with a great one on Thursday. Like we talked about this before, there's not too many good Thursday night games that have happened this year. Mm-hmm. Some of the matchups are not always the best, but the Steelers and Vikings game was a great way to start off the week, I would say.
I would totally agree with that. My God. We talked about it last week. Just the exact same thing I was saying to you. The Vikings always play down to their competition or up to their competition. They almost blew one of the biggest leads in NFL history.
They're up 29-0 at half.
29-0. My God. It was so pathetic. And then their defense collapsed. Oh my God, it was so bad. The Steelers made a huge run they played extraordinarily well down the stretch. They made it an 8-point game. Did you see what happened with Chase Claypool
At the end of the game,
at the end of the game?
I mean, it was just an unfortunate sequence of events, but you just have it's such a boneheaded play. You have to know, like, when you have no timeouts left. I'm not sure if they had one timeout left at that point or not. I don't think they
They had
did, but
0. They had to spike the ball.
they had to spike the ball, and to celebrate and to celebrate a first down is just when you know you have to get the ball back. It's such a boneheaded play, and then things got even worse when I think someone like knocked the ball out of his hands and wasted an extra 5 seconds, and they could have easily had another, gotten another play out of that. So it's just like it's a boneheaded play. It's stupid. It's like why him and Juju are giving the Steelers such a bad rep, but he needs to make up for that big time. It was just a boneheaded play. I mean, like you said, in the first half it was all Vikings. Dalvin Cook wasn't even supposed to play in this game. He was on the IR. He gets activated. He's wearing like a sling on his shoulder, and that's not stopping him. He rushed for over 200 yards, had a couple touchdowns. He was their entire offense. Justin Jefferson had a good game as well, but the Steelers were just like non-existent in the first half, and then Big Ben starts to turn it up a little bit. It was really a tale of two halves for them. Najee didn't do anything in the first half.
I was nervous.
He had a huge second half. So it's just like you can't blame little things on their loss. Like obviously Claypool dancing and not getting the ball to the line costed them, but their first half costed them really. It's hard to come back from down a 29-point deficit. If they came back and won, I believe that would have been the biggest deficit that a team has ever come back from in NFL history, which would have been very impressive. The Vikings still kind of collapsed a little bit there at the end. They're able to hold on, but you can't pick on Claypool entirely. He was very stupid to do that, but it does come down to like so many little things. Like even that last play of the game, they only had time for one more play, but Roethlisberger couldn't have thrown a better ball. Freiermuth catches it. Do you think he still should have came down with that, or like I think it was such a hard ball to come down?
It was such a hard ball to catch.
Got hit hard. He had 3 guys guarding him. Roethlisberger couldn't have thrown that ball anymore perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel bad for Freiermuth, but he should have not, put his head down because it's a tough play to make. I don't even know if half the receivers in the league would have come down with that.
It was a tough play. You're right. Big Ben put it on the money. Credit to him. But he also threw it into triple coverage, and he was going to get whacked the second that ball was in his hands, and he did. It was so hard for him to hold on to that. I don't know many receivers who would have been able to. Yeah, it's tough. But I also really think an important point is, like you said, like Claypool was not the sole reason that they lost that game. The Steelers also is a funnel. Like their defense was a free friggin' runway for all running backs who just have their way. Dalvin Cook is an amazing running back, and the Vikings are very good at drawing up scheme zone runs to get him in space. But they were putrid, like so bad. Granted, TJ Watt got hurt. That hurts.
Yeah.
They were so bad. And looking on the other side of the ball, the Steelers' offensive line, man, are they pathetic. We all know that they were going to be that bad. The Vikings were having their way of huge hits on Big Ben.
Yeah.
Najee had no room. Now, I think this is a good transition because I think this is actually a really interesting topic. The Najee pick, right? No, you're not really supposed to take a running back in the first round. You really only do that like when you have all the other pieces. So like when, for example, like when the Clyde Edwards-Helaire pick came from the Chiefs, people were surprised only because it was Clyde as the first running back off the board. But usually you're not supposed to have like that. But like they had all their other pieces, so they were good. The Steelers had almost nothing. They didn't have a quarterback ready to take the reins once Ben is done. They don't have an offensive line, and they lost Alejandro Villanueva. to the Ravens. I think they cut him actually. And they decided to pick Najee. Najee is a very, very talented player. He's going to be, one of the front runners for Rookie of the Year, although I don't think he'll win. Could that draft capital have been used elsewhere, like on an O lineman? And do you think it could have extended the shelf life of Big Ben had they decided to invest in protecting him as opposed to getting another offensive weapon? What do you think?
So it sounds like from what you're saying, you think the Steelers should have gone elsewhere with that draft pick in terms of maybe an offensive lineman?
I feel I personally believe, and we've talked about it because I think this way for the Giants, you really need an offensive front and a defensive front first, and then you build back. The Steelers didn't have enough players, I felt like, when they drafted Najee to protect Ben. They didn't have enough offensive linemen to let Najee run very effectively, although he is a very good player.
Yeah, I was going to say, I agree with you, but I also disagree with you at the same time because it was just such a hard move to pass on Najee, especially with what he was able to do at Alabama. They needed a running back. You think about their running backs over the years, Le'Veon Bell, James Conner, but they were so productive because of the offensive line. And it is interesting to me how good Najee has been this year, despite their offensive line being so weak, which makes me think, like, if they're able to get an offensive lineman this year and start, building that offensive line back, because they had such a great offensive line. And Big Ben's not very mobile, so you need to have a good offensive line with him. Assuming he's gone after this year, who knows who their next quarterback will be, but you do need to start rebuilding that offensive line. They need to make that, mandatory. But I think Najee was a great pick. They needed that playmaker in the backfield, and he's proven that. And like you said, the Vikings really had a field day with that offensive line. There was like some plays I was watching where like
so bad.
They had a defensive end blitzing, and nobody was. They had like two defensive ends blitzing, and then there was only one guy there. So I was looking at him like, somebody's going to get through and sack him, and sure enough, they did. And he just couldn't get rid of the ball at all in that first half. But I guess they figured things out, turned it around a little bit in the second half. But at that point, it was just a little bit too far gone, and unfortunately, it puts themselves in that situation where you have to point fingers at, is it Claypool's fault? Was it Freiermuth's fault? Well, I don't really think it was any of their faults. It's just when you put yourself in such a hole, it's hard to come out of it. And speaking of holes, what do you make of going on in Jacksonville right now with Urban Meyer? What a disaster that is.
Oh my God. They're such a pathetic team. But Urban Meyer, my God, they are going to have some decisions to make this offseason.
He needs to go. He needs to go.
I totally agree with you. He is such a friggin' disaster. I mean, it's like, look, they get shut out by the Titans this past week, 20-0. When you were looking at it prior, like, so the whole history of it, he gets pried out of retirement after his days at Ohio State. He gets pried out of retirement, and then it was just so downhill the whole year. Like, we knew the Jaguars were going to be bad. Like, I feel like that was never really a question. What was in question, and what was most questionable, was first letting that girl grind on him in that video in Cleveland after he decided to stay after the game. That's so weird. Also, obviously, that goes viral. Then he takes aim at coaches, calling them losers. That came out recently in some stories, making them like defend their resume to show when they have ever won. I mean, you have like Marvin Jones, who is just such a true professional everywhere he's been. And then he was so pissed off that he left the facility until he had to be convinced to come back. Like, I feel like, and then the whole thing with James Robinson, don't even get me started. Like, that makes no sense. Playing Carlos Hyde over him. Like, what are you doing? But, God, it's just like, what the hell is going on over there?
Yeah, that James Robinson situation made absolutely no sense to me. he's your best offensive weapon you have at this point. Why are they not giving him 30 touches a game? Even if he if they get stopped on all 3 downs, just give him the ball. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Makes no sense to me either. God, and he's so talented. And after what he did his rookie year, you're really not going to give him the ball? He's their best offensive playmaker. It's not even close.
I just don't understand why I know they needed a new coach, the Jaguars, and they needed to rebuild, but I don't get why they brought Urban Meyer in the first place. Did some good things at Ohio State, and I'm sure he's a good coach, but just with the domestic abuse allegations he had at Ohio State and just all the different things he had going on, I just felt like this was a recipe for a disaster. The things you already named going on, in the Jaguars organization, they're not happy with each other. They're obviously going to be bad. Just keep losing, get that first pick. I feel so bad for Trevor because all he knows is winning, and he won his whole career. And then now he's just losing. He probably doesn't know what to do with himself. He's probably in a corner, in a ball, he feels lost, but it's just Trevor Lawrence will be a top quarterback in this league. Mark my words. He will be a top quarterback in this league. Right now, it doesn't look like it through 4 interceptions in the last game, but you put him on a good team, he's going to do stuff like he did at Clemson. He's still so talented. The Jaguars do need to just rebuild. They need to get a new coach, someone who's going to come in, who doesn't have, problems, who's not going to go to a bar and, start grinding on a girl. You need to bring someone in who's young, who wants to win, who's hungry, and that's not Urban Meyer. He needs to go.
I think they probably brought him in just because of the big name. That's my guess.
Yeah.
But obviously it didn't work out, and that's the way it goes.
Yeah, but we'll see what happens with that. We'll keep an eye on that. Let's just kind of look through some of the top games that happened this past week. Right away, when I got I think it was a tweet about the Raiders players meeting on the Chiefs logo, right away I knew that was not going to end well for them. Yeah. And sure enough, I don't think any fights broke out or anything, but they beat them on the field, punched them where it hurt, whooped them 48-9. Patty Mahomes had a good game. Their running game looked good. Their defense held them to 9 points. The Raiders are another team that just keeps going downhill with all the things that have happened to them this year. But the Chiefs, they look really good out there. We've talked about them before and how they've really turned things around from what they were at. They were 3-4. They might have won 7 games in a row at this point. And they just, they stay winning, and it is going to lead to a great game on a short week of preparation for this Thursday when they travel to face the Chargers.
Yeah, that'll be a hell of a game. And I totally agree. I mean, my God, it was so bad. The Raiders, I think, granted, they've dealt with a lot this season with Henry Ruggs and John Gruden. They really are probably going to have to consider blowing it up and trading Derek Carr. Derek Carr, I really love Derek Carr. And I think he's a good quarterback and would succeed elsewhere, but not there. And just kind of continuing to move us along. Ravens dealt with a unfortunate loss with Lamar Jackson. And by loss, I mean they lost the game and Lamar Jackson to kind of a cheap shot to his ankle. So that is an unfortunate thing.
And they've just been going downhill ever since that 2-point conversion they run.
Yeah, right. That was a ballsy call. And I mean, losing Lamar, they already haven't really looked that great. Losing Lamar, the writing was in stone, even though they almost made a miraculous comeback against the Browns, who blew a huge lead to Tyler Huntley. But whatever. I mean, it wasn't meant to be. Rashad Bateman had a really good game. It just wasn't meant to be. Unfortunately, they lost by 2. And then, I mean, there's not really much more to say on this game. I don't know. The Browns are going to probably lose to the Raiders in this coming week, but we'll get to that later. We'll move on to our division, the NFC East. The Cowboys take down the Washington football team.
Yeah, it was 27-20. The Cowboys won. They really dominated that whole game. I think they took their foot off the gas a little bit at the end, so the score isn't really telling of what the game was like. But Amari Cooper played well. Dak played well. I believe they're 9-4 right now. They're running away with the division. That's for sure. I guess the next would be the Eagles, but I don't think we're going to catch them.
I think the Cowboys win this week and they win the division.
Mm-hmm.
Giants the neck is not going to make any difference in this game. So,
and Washington football team, they're just falling apart ever since they lost Chase Young, and now Heineke might not play. I know Gibson didn't really do a whole lot this past week, but they just don't feed. I feel like they don't feed Scary Terry enough. But the Eagles have an opportunity. The Eagles have an opportunity to get the wild card with a big win this week on the road against the Washington football team. Dallas will travel to the Meadowlands to play the Giants. Should be an easy dub for them as well.
Cakewalk.
Mark that one up as a victory. Give them division, spit on it, wrap it up, a little bow tie gift. Here you go, guys.
There you go. Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas. So that'll be 2 interesting games to watch. Probably one of the games of the week was the 49ers Bengals game. That was a fun game to watch. Two teams hungry for a playoff spot. Went to overtime. The Bengals started off with a field goal, and then they just needed to stop them, but no stopping Brandon Ayuk when he's running down that sideline and dove for the end zone. Another wasn't as exciting as the flip he had for the touchdown against the Eagles that one game, but that's
crazy.
But he's so athletic, and he had enough to reach the pylon, got them the overtime victory. Another overtime victory, which is crazy, which was the game of the week, was the Bills and the Bucs. Tom Brady absolutely dominated in the first half. They were running away with it. They were up by a lot. And then little did I know, the Bills come back, force overtime. So that would have been a huge collapse on the Bucs' behalf. They obviously need to tighten things up on the defensive end. They play the Saints this week, which will be an interesting game. But they were able to hold on, and then in overtime, they were able to get the victory.
The biggest mistake you can do is give Tom Brady the ball with almost no time or in overtime. He's going to win the game. He's just the GOAT. That's how it goes. I mean, who would have guessed that was how, but
MVP frontrunner right now.
Easily.
Battling it out with Aaron Rodgers. He had a great game this week, Sunday Night Football. Didn't need to prove anymore, but proved once again why he owns the Bears. Put up a 45 spot on them. Devontae Adams had a great game. Aaron Jones had a pretty good game, but even with that toe, seems like he needs surgery on that toe, but he's going to have to wait until the season's over. But it's interesting to look at that because I guess he can't be as mobile with the toe injury, but with their offensive line and just feeding Devontae Adams.
I think they get Bakhtiari soon also, which will be a huge offensive line.
That 1-2 punch they have in the backfield with Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. It's interesting. It'll be interesting to see if how far they'll get in the playoffs this year. They're not going to be an easy team to beat.
No way.
Their defense
has been so outstanding. And Jair is going to come back probably this week.
I'd love to see a rematch with the Bucs.
Me too.
Don't know if Rodgers has enough, but assuming with everything that's happened this year, there was talks about him not even being a Packer this year. They've come a long way, and this could be, their last ride together potentially. So
we'll see if the Last Dance prediction really comes into fruition, similar to how MJ, Scottie Pippen, and the Bulls.
Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously two other big NFC teams that happened on Monday night that could make some noise in the playoffs. The Rams got a big victory after losing 3 games in a row. They win their second straight over Kyler. Kyler just didn't look that great out there.
Nope. No, he did not.
They do have a pretty good defense, but
but they were without Jalen Ramsey due to COVID, which was a big loss for them. But I mean, the Rams defense looked incredible, and Kyler did not. Cooper Kupp, my God, what a year that man is having!
Yeah,
right? he is on pace for almost 2,000 yards receiving, almost, which is disgusting. Like,
Yeah.
he is so ridiculous, and it's so interesting that the upgrade from Jared Goff to Matt Stafford has just raised the ceiling of this offense, has raised the ceiling of Cooper Kupp specifically. Man, is he a talented player. How he has rebounded from that major injury that he had is ridiculous. And that's a big win for them. The Cardinals have looked really outstanding this entire year, and I feel like, look, that's a team that's going to be tough to beat in the playoffs.
Yeah, and the Rams don't have an easy game this week either. They play the Seahawks, who aren't going to be a playoff team, but they're riding a nice little win streak too.
Yeah.
So that's not going to be an easy game for them either. The Cardinals will obviously have a nice bounce back win, most likely, because they play the Lions this week. But yeah, definitely interesting week through 14 weeks so far. We'll see what week 15 has in store for us, Jay. Thanks for another great episode.
Yeah, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. We really appreciate all of you, and like we said before, it's really important. Tell someone you love them. You never know what's going to happen in this world. And we thank you guys for listening to us. We know this was a long episode, but thank you. JumpStart Sports. I'm glad we could jumpstart that morning.
I love you.
Oh, you do?